Hello, let's talk about a very simple 4-step script and process that you can use for virtually any type of lead in any type of situation. 99.9% of the time, this will be a highly effective script that you can use and a very easy process to follow. And it's really cool because you don't have to have one script for Facebook leads and one script for referrals from past clients and one script for sellers and one script for buyers. And we can break it all down into the foundations of a conversation and what we want to be going through with any type of lead. Now, for this video, I'm going to focus mainly on buyers, but there's just a couple of small tweaks in one of the steps if you're switching this over for seller leads. I'm excited to chat with you about it. My name is Micah Olson. I've been a licensed real estate agent for 22, 23 years. Prior to that, I worked in coaching and helping agents with business systemization and technology use. I'm the founder of Agent Aspire, and I own a real estate team in the Utah area. All right, let's jump into this script. I'm going to go through just a bullet point list really quickly, and then we'll jump into each one as we talk about them. So step 1 is digging for motivation. Step 2 is getting into the logical stuff. What type of house? What's your time frames? What are we looking to do? Step 3 is what's our next step? Sharing what the next action items are with the lead. And then step 4 is just what's our deadline? When will we have this next step completed? So let's jump into motivation. A very easy way to find their motivation is just asking, hey, what has you out looking at houses today? I've thrown in sometimes I'll say, you know, you could be doing a lot of other things on a Saturday morning. What has you out looking at houses? Something to get into their motivation. If it's a seller, very easy question. Moving is hard. What has you thinking about moving? And then they'll tell you something. And again, I'm going to stick with buyers, but you know, we want a place with less stairs. Okay, so that's their surface motivation. I like to go at least 2 questions deeper. Okay, tell me about that. Why don't you want stairs? Oh, we're getting older, I broke my leg, you know, whatever that is. And then I go, okay, so I get it. I mean, I imagine if I was doing XYZ, I would want less stairs too. What would that mean for you in your life, in your lifestyle, to have a house with less stairs? And then they'll go a little bit deeper. You should spend about 3 minutes talking about their motivation. If you're spending shorter than that, you don't know what they really want and you don't know what it means to them. And if you're spending longer than that, which I have a tendency to do a lot, I'll get in talking, oh, your grandkids, and you don't want them up and down stairs all the time, and tell me how many grandkids do you have? And I just had my first granddaughter, and you know, and if we're spending longer than 3 minutes, we're skirting the purpose of the call, which actually can, I mean, you can build a relationship, but it can hurt your image and your presentation of, I'm a professional, I'm here to help you. So it's not bad to get to know them, but we don't need 30 minutes on the first call to get to know them. So 3 minutes on motivation, and this is foundational. We have to know what they want, because when they get into doing a loan application or when they get into starting to pre-box their items if they're selling their house, it gets hard and it gets frustrating, and the lender asks for another document, and there's these issues, and we can go back to that motivation and say, yeah, but remember, we're looking for a house that will give you this type of lifestyle because of whatever their motivation was. So it's a key step, and don't miss out on that. Now, just real quickly on this, if I'm leaving a message, we're not going to get into their motivation on a message. So I don't leave a message and say, hey, I'm just calling to see why you want to buy a house. Like that's not going to elicit a return call. We'll have some other scripts and videos that I post about messages that you should leave. We want an offer for immediate response. I call it a MOFR, make offer for immediate response on a message. So this is just an in-person phone call. Okay, so step 2 is getting into the logical stuff. And I follow, years ago I did a lot of Zillow advertising, and they had their Zillow University where they would teach an acronym and say, here's what we need to figure out. And that's just always stuck with me. You can use whatever you want. I mean, essentially we need their location, the details about the house, their timing, their loan qualifications if they're buyers, things like that. So the Zillow acronym was LP Mama, location. They said price. We changed it on my team to property. And that's where we ask, bedrooms, bathrooms, garage, size of yard, things like that. And then mortgage, are they pre-qualified? And there's a great way to ask this, by the way, super easy script right here. Do you have an excellent lender, or would you like me to refer you to somebody that I've worked with for years and has helped hundreds of buyers get good rates on their mortgage? That's an easy way to ask it. Very rarely do I even have people that are already pre-approved. I just talked to someone yesterday. They're pre-approved with a credit union. And they still said, oh, it couldn't hurt to get a second opinion. I don't know if our guy is excellent. So that's how I ask about the mortgage. We do need to find out about an agent. Do they have an agent that they're working with? That is not the first question that I ask. It's way down in the list. And then I've got an agent script if they say that they do have an agent. I'll put the link down in the description. Let's see, where are we? LPMA. So M, then we need to get a meeting. We need to get an appointment with them. And it's important, and this is kind of one of the next steps most likely, but depending on what they need to do and the system that you put into place, I don't like to personally go out and show properties until I have met them in person. And honestly, I don't love meeting them in person until they've had a conversation with a lender. Now, that's just my personal way of doing business. You can do things differently. I know one agent that would set the appointment, go to meet them at the property, and not let them in to show it unless they sign a buyer broker agreement, an exclusive agreement, which, that makes me cringe a little bit. I feel like I'd be getting in fights with people. But whatever your process is, help them to know what the next steps are. So if it was me talking to a buyer, I would say, okay, here's our next steps. We need to get you in touch with a really good lender, and we need to make sure that we're getting you the absolute best rate that we can possibly get you so that we save you money. We don't want you to be house poor. As we're doing that, you and I will also meet in person in my office to talk about the buying process and how I work as an agent. And then I set up, let's get you with this agent, and then we'll set a time. Okay, so from there, that's our next step. Now, the next thing is the deadline. And I like to put this on them. So I'll ask them, will you talk to so-and-so, the lender, and call me back by Friday at 2, or will that give you enough time? Yes. Okay. And you'll call me. Yes. Now, half the time they don't call me. And if they don't, then I call them and I remind them, hey, I'm super excited to help you find this house with no stairs so that your grandkids can come and blah, 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 whatever their motivation is. Same thing if my lenders will report into me if they have gotten in contact with the buyer, when they've set an appointment to talk to them, and if that appointment was kept. And if they miss any of those, if it's been 2 days and they still haven't chatted with the lender, I'm going to be calling that lead, texting that lead, bringing it back to their motivation, and reminding them of why we're doing this. Now, just a couple of kind of miscellaneous tips that I want to throw in here that can really help streamline your business. I have a buyer conversation guide and a seller conversation guide that I've made that just, it's fill in the blanks. And I like to actually have these printed off so that I can fill them in. I have some that I've laminated that I keep by my phones anywhere I'm making calls. If I have ISAs that are working for me, it's a requirement that they have both of these forms where they can read them as they're talking to people and can fill them out. We then go and digitize the information and put it into an electronic system where everyone on our team can look at it. But I like them to have a very simple fill in the blank way to collect information and remind them of what they're doing. And so I call that my buyer conversation guide, seller conversation guide. I'll put those down in the description so that you can see what those look like. And then the next tip is, I hate the word script. I mean, we all use it because that, we know what that means and what we're doing with that. But I like to call this a conversation guide. I do not do a rote, memorized, hi, this is Micah Olson. Even if you can say it, and I hear people doing script practice all the time. and they, try to get so good at what they're saying that they can come across naturally. I hate that. It just rubs me the wrong way. I have points that I like to follow. Do this however you want. I mean, you can take this script and memorize it and have your team memorize it word for word. I prefer to think of it as a conversation guide and just a direction to go that I'm following the bullet points, but not necessarily, saying the exact same words every time. Another tip is, as you're in the logical step 2, and you're gathering information, dig for their motivation just a little bit more at that point as well. So, they say, well, I'd like to go to property that's in this area. Oh, tell me about that. Why do you like that area? It gives you a little bit more insight into who they are and what they're looking for, what the lifestyle is that they want. Are they looking for close to work, close to schools, close to family, further from family? What's the motivations? And then you can dig in just a little bit. Oh, we want this area because the school has a really good Chinese immersion program for the elementary, and we, really want our kids to learn Chinese. Oh, that's awesome. And I'm taking notes on that, and then I've got it in their file. And I might go out and do something like, in that situation, I might go and get a brochure from the school and send it to them and say, you know what, I was looking into this and it is great. It's just another touch point that you can have with the leads, and sometimes more motivation will be brought up that wasn't discussed earlier. They said they just don't want stairs, but now also we're learning they want to be closer to work because mom's been driving, 1 hour each way to work, and if they could knock that down to 15 minutes, it would be saving her almost 2 hours a day of driving, an hour and a half. So learn and dig for motivation. And then once they tell you something like that, go to my default question is, what would that mean to you? I mean, how would that change your lifestyle right now if you were only driving 15 minutes to work instead of an hour to work? And then listen, let them talk. Another tip for conversation guides and scripts is open-ended questions encourage and draw them out, and there's a time and a place for that. I don't say, are you looking to buy a home? And they say yes or no. I say, what has you out looking for homes today? And it's an open-ended question, and we use that to gather information. However, if you get somebody that's talkative or taking over the conversation, like a lot of times if you're working in a luxury home market, you'll get these driver personalities, and they're, well, how do you do this? And how long have you been doing this? And have you sold this type of home? And they're starting to take control of the conversation. Yes or no questions we use as interrupts. And so if we feel like we're losing the direction that the conversation's going, or the other person's talking too much, or we need to kind of rein that back in and gather that, we use a yes or no question, and it stops that conversation, and then we can quickly go forward from there. So, simple yes or no question. So now you said that you don't want to be over $1 million on the purchase price, correct? Yes, that's correct. Okay, great. And I don't give a big pause, because if they're taking over the conversation, they'll say, yeah, that's right, because I think you should be able to find me a house for, whatever. So we just go quickly, yes or no question, interrupt, and then kind of in the same breath, okay, that's awesome, thanks for sharing that. Now, I'm wondering, what's important to you about blah, 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 and then we go back into the question. And you can use this foundations of conversation 4-step process for literally every kind of lead. A past client calls you and says, I've got a friend who's wanting to buy a house, and they give you their phone number. You can call them up and say, hey, Bob just called me and told me that you're wanting to buy a house. What has you looking at buying homes right now? And you just go through this same process. Same thing for seller leads. Hey, I got a request on my website for a free valuation on your home. What has you wondering about your home's value? And it's just an easy process, and then we just go right down through these 4 steps. So dig for motivation, get into the logical, excuse me, talk about what the next steps are, and then set a deadline. Check the description down below for links on other topics that I've mentioned in this video.